team, if you like, have mounted a very sophisticated legal case. They've won it, and what they planned as far ago as April has come to fruition. He's been cleared by the courts.
The CPS adamant that this should have gone to court. Are you of a similar view?
Well, my view is not relevant. It was the courts and the CPS whose view was relevant. They thought it was the right thing to do. They must have looked at it very closely, decided to take it, and they've not been able to force their prosecution.
I'm told we might hear from members of the Ferdinand family outside the court in a moment. If we do, I'll cut you off if you don't mind. But in anticipation of that, what are the wider lessons from this? Because whatever was said about John Terry's behaviour during this court case, we've learned perhaps more about what goes on the pitch than we thought we knew before.
Well, before I answer that, Julian, I think we just could wind back just a touch, because Bruce Buck, the chairman of Chelsea, has just released a very, very short statement. And in that statement, he said that John Terry can go back to training and playing football. That is true for now. This saga is not over, unfortunately, for John, because he is still under investigation by the Football Association. They've not charged him, but he's still under investigation. He's under investigation based on what he admitted, saying those words. And the Football Association, under their rules, need to decide, has he broken any of their rules? Ungentlemanly conduct, professional wrongdoing, bringing the game into disrepute. These are important contraventions, if you like. But he has not been charged under the law of the land, but that doesn't necessarily mean he won't be charged under Football Association rules. So I'm afraid for John Terry, this is only half time. It is not over.
And at I don't know whether we have a timetable potentially for when the FA will arrive at any decision on that.
Well, no one knows when the FA quite going to do anything, quite frankly, but we have an Olympics round the corner. The world, I'm sure, is watching this particular saga. It's an edifying spectacle, but I'm sure the Football Association will want to get this put to bed before the Olympics start.
Take it back to where I was a moment ago, and what we've learned about activity on the pitch. Of course, most of us are not naive enough to imagine that some pretty bad language is thrown around. But have we learned more about the nature of that language and the way players conduct themselves on the pitch, particularly at the very top of the game, than we had before in this case?
No, not at all. I mean, industrial language is used right across the length and breadth of the country. And I think that no one's naive enough to think that footballers don't get involved in that sort of exchange. I think what is at stake here is the way that exchange took place and what it involved. We were talking about an allegation of racism. For John Terry now, it is about the FA's test. Do they think that John Terry should have said those words in any event? Now, that's the test that they must put together.
What about when Chelsea play Queen's Park Rangers next season? We know last season that the handshake didn't happen. What do they do this time round?
Well, they've already played. I mean, they played last season after the
at Stamford Bridge.
At Stamford Bridge,
yeah.
And both players recognise that you know, the spotlight's on them, but you know, they're professional enough to get on with that, if not behave civil to one another. When it comes to the business of winning football matches, they're utterly focused and utterly committed. It's because they are focused and committed, occasionally you'll get eruptions, the likes of which we've just seen.
Kick it out. How close are we now to kicking it out?
Well, I think we were very, very close. I still think we are very close. It's work in progress. It's always work in progress. But the fear that I have, if the Football Association don't act swiftly and decisively on the second half of this process, then I think that the Kick It Out campaign and all anti-racism campaigns will take a massive blow. Because I think the vast majority of people who've watched this case will be looking to the Football Association to exact a different approach than the courts. It's about behaviour on the field of play. And I think that it's up to the Football Association to determine and explain to the public whether or not they feel that John Terry's behaviour was acceptable.
And about what that behaviour on the field of play is then interpreted as being acceptable or otherwise on the terraces, in the playgrounds and beyond? I mean, are we talking role models here as well?
Well, I'm not quite sure the Football Association can exact any sanction on football fans per se. That's the law of the land, and on the jurisdiction of the club. What I'm talking about is the FA are in charge of the rules of the game, and therefore John Terry comes within that.
Bear with us, Garth, because I think we can go back to the courtroom now, and I think we're seeing members of the Ferdinand family leaving. There was some suggestion that they might go to the microphones that we saw there with Dan Rowan a moment ago. But as you can see, they clearly have decided that they don't want to say anything at this stage and have quietly moved away from the magistrates' court. I presume a car was waiting for them and they will head on their way. And of course, Anton Ferdinand was not there today because he's flown off to, I think, Hong Kong for QPR's pre-season.
Well, it's business as usual.
Absolutely.
At the moment. But it's interesting, as I've observed this case, the way the Ferdinand families have behaved throughout this, they've been very, very dignified because, in effect, they've done nothing wrong. Anton has endorsed the allegation when he realised, obviously, that these things have been said about him, and seems to have been, to some extent, a suggestion on the social network sites that he's responsible for causing the national team some sort of embarrassment. Rio, his brother, on the other hand, Manchester United player, former England captain, it looks on the face of it that he may have suffered a selection in the European Championships because of this.
Although, of course, Roy Hodgson says
Roy Hodgson says differently.
Yeah.
But there is a constituency out there that takes a slightly different view.
Sure. Garth, good to talk to you. Thanks very much for coming in.
And just to let you know that on BBC Three next Monday there'll be a programme asking, is football racist? It's presented by Clark Carlisle, chairman of the Professional Footballers Association.
It's 16 minutes past 3 and here are the latest headlines.